School me a little bit
Good
here?
good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the new way on YouTube radio. I've got Bruce and Magic with me today, and Bruce has a question that he wants to be schooled on how we do this. So, what's your
Well,
question?
actually, no. I'm just curious how I can put it in the comments because I've got the link right here. I've saved it, but I can't put it in the comments. I don't know why.
Oh, I have my comments on the right, and
Yeah.
down here I have a place where I can type,
Yep.
and then it comes in,
Oh,
and for some reason, it there
there
you
it is.
go. And I
There it
can
is.
push it here, and it says I can type, and then I can bring it on screen.
Well, it should be there visible now. It's visible to me.
Okay.
There's
And
so there's the link, and it's a hot link, so that if anybody clicks on it, they can they can use it. That's what you were looking for, wasn't it?
yeah, and then they can appear in the room, and when they appear in the room, I can add them to the stream.
And we can all be members of the Virtually Not Alone network.
Right, which are people who live alone but hang out together on the internet in little corners that are made by squaring the circle.
Squaring the circle.
You remember that as a concept that we had back in the hedonist days when we used to hang out with people like Ed and John Swimmerton and people like that,
Right.
Adam. But squaring the circle is a technique that, if you need a corners in a round item, works very nicely. And it's a mathematical proof from Descartes, I believe.
It was
So,
interesting that Nassim Harriman uh, came up on yeah. I mean we
we
had
talked about it, and then they put him on your screen due to the fact that we had mentioned it.
it wasn't connected to something that we said.
Right. But in our last talk, he was one of the names we mentioned in the talk. So the algorithm now knows you are interested in the scene, so they'll give you more stuff. These algorithms are insidious.
I
They
guess so.
really are. The trick
I'm
is to
not
play
so
with
interested
them.
in Nassim. I've just met the man, and he joined us in our Hedris meeting several times, and he's a really interesting character and very smart. And so I like smart, interesting people. There you go.
Yes. I felt that he had a chip on his shoulder when
Yeah.
we were in the hedonist group,
Hmm.
which was about anywhere from 6 to 20 people who would meet at Asha's house every Wednesday evening. And
I miss
so
those meetings. We had a lot of wonderful discussions.
we did. And when it was just the core group, we talked about a lot of esoteric things. But most often, we had a guest who talked about their stuff, or we had a designated speaker so
Hmm.
that Ed could present Ed's stuff on dreams,
Right.
or Adam could present the latest going on in his physics world. I actually did 6 months of consulting with Adam's company,
Oh yeah.
and they paid me for it. And instead of taking money, which I wasn't doing at the time, I took chemistry equipment. I had them buy me a spectrometer and a couple of other things. And so it turned out that we strung like 15 batteries together to do a test to figure out the duration of the batteries. And we hooked up all sorts of things to them. And we ended up doing a test to see what the lifetime duration of the batteries were.
Hmm.
And these were all the lead acid batteries that, like the cars. but they were smaller versions so that we could stack them on a shelf in series. And you can stack batteries in series or you can stack them in parallel. And they add differently if they're stacked in series from if they're stacked in parallel.
Sure.
So we stacked them all in series and we started the experiment one afternoon. And the calculations that we had done based on the weights of the metal and stuff were that these batteries should run out one by one over the course of about 30 days. We got there the next morning and every single battery was drained.
30 days, huh?
The duty cycle on batteries is it's only a couple of minutes.
Well, they want you to buy another battery.
Right. And the idea of how much work the battery in your car actually does, you turn the key, the battery sparks. Once the car is running, the battery is no longer necessary.
Right. It gets charged by the alternator, but that's it. It's not.
Right. The only reason that you have 250 pounds of lead in your car is because those creeps called Rockefeller and Rothschilds had nowhere to put all the lead that was universally used up until 1920.
That's
And
why we
then
have
suddenly
fluoride on our
became a poison.
municipal water systems too.
Oh, yes, yes. And in fact, Alice in Wonderland, one of my favorite books,
Yeah.
has a character called the Mad Hatter.
Yeah.
And he was mad because of mercury poisoning.
Mercury poisoning. Right.
So the Mad Doctor Time is a play on the Mad Hatter. It's also a play on Alfred E. Newman.
Alfred E. Newman.
How's that?
What, me worry?
What me worry.
Oh, okay.
Mad magazine in the 1960s and 70s.
Wow.
Whenever it came out, I got it the first day. And the very first thing I would do was turn to the back page and look at the picture and read the advertisement. And it was always a tongue-in-cheek joke advertisement. And I'd get the image of the picture. And then you took the picture and you three-folded it. And you folded it in a way that it was laid over itself. And then you got a whole different image. But it was what the advertisement really meant. And so that was an awesome thing that Mad Magazine did to attract people, was to have a little game at the back that you could get some inside information that people couldn't figure out the game didn't have.
Yeah, we were lucky to have stuff like that. We had the fabulous Furry Freak Brothers and I mean,
their new cartoon is coming out on the 25th.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be as good as the old ones, but it's premiering on the 25th.
I had a wonderful, wonderful meeting with an old friend on Father's Day. I had gone to a pub. First time I went to a pub in quite a while because I just don't like. They're too expensive. So normally I drink alone at home. But this friend of mine, he comes running out of a bar that I don't go into anymore, and we start chatting about another friend of mine who's now passed, a guy that I went to Costa Rica with, drove all over Costa Rica for 6 weeks, rented a car with him, and we had a hell of a fun time. And he's a mutual. Well, this friend of mine that came out of the bar, he's a musician, and he used to play with my friend. And we started reminiscing about all the wonderful musical groups that were so active when we were kids, growing up. And you could just start naming them and not stop for quite a while. There was so many wonderful musical groups and individual performers that there was so much talent.
Yeah. Yeah. I was in Tulsa, and it was the same way.
Tulsa,
Yeah,
Oklahoma. Huh?
yeah,
The comment by Grizz is well taken. Spy versus Spy. That's another one.
it is.
I always liked when the Gray Spy came through, but my favorite about Mad Magazine was always the cartoonist cartoons between the different boxes of cartoons,
Hmm.
where he'd make some tongue in cheek point that was hilarious, but half the time didn't make any sense.
Well,
Honestly, I was
also,
more into Cracked magazine than I was Mad Magazine.
Well, Cracked was a takeoff on Mad. It did
Yeah,
very
it
much the
was.
same thing.
It
yeah.
It
was.
was Bruce.
Oh, I was just agreeing. It was a takeoff on Matt.
Yeah.
The trick to the whole thing of those magazines was they were allowed to be totally irrelevant or irreverent.
Yeah.
And
Both at the
so,
same time.
yeah. And so, whatever they said, they take a movie, and one of their major things each month was to take a first run movie and retell it in Mad Magazine style, so that the ending always made more sense than what they actually had in the movie. And now that we're 40 years later from my times of having actually 50 years from Mad Magazine, I'm
50 years.
65 now.
Wow.
It just, I look back and I think, boy, would those wokesters on Facebook really be able to stomach any of that?
Oh, that would be out of bounds, man. I'm telling you. That would be way too much for them.
Yeah, I wanna get in the cage with the winner of the Elon Musk Mark Zuckerberg cage fight
I've heard of that, yeah.
and have it so that we have a representative of the people going against the winner of the social media control system in a 2 out of 3 fall match, or maybe make it a tag team so we can have both of them against me and some other designated oldster.
I'll volunteer.
All right.
That
When we
would be too much. That would be too much fun to throw Mark
yes,
Zuckerberg out of the ring. Well, if we're in a cage, though, we can't throw him out, can we?
well, between you and I, let's work up the idea, write it into a proposal, and throw it out at the internet.
Yeah, we'll just have to put it on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm not on Twitter, but it would be no problem at all to come up with something,
Oh, no.
and I'll we can post it on Twitter, we can post it on Minds. Minds has to be the most pathetic social media I've ever seen.
Did you say pathetic?
Yes,
Oh,
pathetic, as in not real good at what they do and capable of really irritating the people that make their content. I mean, they spam you all the time. I've been shadow banned for quite a while. The price of a Minds token is 0.0818 cents and has been locked there for, I think, 6 weeks. But since I collect data on Minds, the price one, two, three, four, yeah, this is the sixth strong that it will have been at the same price. So they're not even telling you the price of their token,
I
which
thought
has
it
to
was
be
really
under
cheap,
8 cents.
I mean, you encouraged me to check out Minds, or I encouraged myself because you're there, and and they offered to give me tokens, right?
Right.
That I assumed were, without much monetary value.
Yeah, at one point you used to be able to use the tokens to give your post a boost,
Right.
but now they only want money and the tokens aren't worth any money, so you can't use tokens, which are the only reason to have tokens is to
Right.
boost your stuff. But the
Right.
boost
But they
also
wanted my bank account number.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that. No,
Yeah.
they don't have my bank account number, and
No,
don't
I'm
give
sorry.
any.
There's no way in the world I'm giving you my bank account number. Who are you?
No, I just treat it as a funny money account, and I actually used it to get from 144 to 233 in my existence game, which runs by Fibonacci. And the game is called Existence. I started it in 2001. I won the one player game by reaching the maximum number that I could handle of people, which was 34 on Fibonacci. I think I got to 37 or 38. But I knew every person and who they were and what they were going to say on the show if they stayed in character. And I ran that show for a couple of years, and it worked on a different system. And when that radio show got to a Discord room of 144, I started the next level of existence to go to 233, which is 144 plus 89. And I need the rule of the game is if you win at one level, you are ineligible for the next level to win again because you've got too much advantage.
Mhm.
So in my one player game, which is now up shooting for 377 target, but I can't use mines as the 377 target. And Discord is eligible, but there is absolutely no way I want 377 people in my Discord server.
That would be discordant.
Yes, it would be way beyond my capacity. But the group theory says that the amount of time it takes me to go from 233 to 377 is the same amount of time it took me to go from 144 to 233, which is from when I started my Discord or the Minds account to when it reached 233 people. And I think there's 265 now. But YouTube will be my 377 number because it's already in the mid 30s and I haven't done anything really with it except start posting these videos. I don't want to be a YouTube superstar. I never want to activate their super chat system, which I think is outrageously obnoxious in letting people who play the system game cut the line to talk to the person on air.
I've thought about, getting on YouTube, but as you know, I used to be a journalist, and I'm well published. Just leave it there.
Well, we will get you there as part of this LARP.
I don't think that the world needs another talking head. That's why I decided I didn't want to do it.
No, we're going to get you to the point where you doing your regular journalism is looked forward to by such a large cast of characters that you will have status in a non fiscal world. But at this point, the problem that we have to overcome before we can deal with any other problems is the financial system. Right now, it is so friggin' crooked that it has bought the political system, it has bought the medical system, it has bought the education system, and none of them are functional for any people.
Well,
So,
now
in
and that brings up an interesting subject too, Lenny. Really interesting because they're talking about now in July going to a digital currency, and I just I mean it's it's a lot of crazy, and I don't want to take part in it. I have been systematically withdrawing the little bit of money that I have in my bank account and putting it into cash. The problem is, U.S. dollars aren't worth so much.
not only that, but the whole idea of their digital system is to get the grocery stores to only take your digits, not your cash.
Yeah, great. I mean, I don't know how we can stop this.
Oh, the way to stop it is exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
Get everything you have in cash, because there will be a whole undersector that deals only in cash, and the
Only in cash.
value of what that cash is dependent on local values, not whatever the world thinks it is, because it's only going to be good locally. And if you remember, Ithaca, was it Ithaca or Utica? Someplace in upstate New York had their own cash dollars, and they worked the system for 15, 20 years. I think they were called Ithaca dollars. And the idea was that when you were in Ithaca, if you were a local, you would spend Ithaca dollars, and they were redeemable for currency if you needed to go out. But the price of things in Ithaca dollars was normal, as the price in regular dollars was inflated, because you had the game of regular dollars, in which, what's a dollar worth now? Is it worth 2 cents anymore?
I don't think it's worth 2 cents anymore. When you
In
compare it to what it was
1913
when they
terms.
started printing them in 1913.
Right. 1913 was the hijacking of the financial system.
Yeah.
And it's obvious to me that the only way we get out of it is by not using it, but we have to develop an alternative to not use it. So here's the plan: keep enough of your Social Security in their system so that you can go to your grocery store and buy food. Or if you had a car, you could pump some gas into your car, but don't use it except when you have to.
Right.
Don't keep your excess there. I
Yeah.
really think that where it's going to take place is on the coinage level. That I know a lot of people who, anytime they get coins in their pocket, throw them into a jar and forget about them, and have the jars full of coins, pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters.
Mhm.
And so, if you want to keep change in your pocket, Douglas Adams had the solution: 42. That's a quarter, a nickel, a dime, and 2 pennies. So you can always get your 2 cents in,
I
and you
always
have one
carry
of each
four
coin.
quarters.
Okay.
I always carry 4 quarters because it cost me 4 quarters to challenge on the pool table, and after that, I generally don't need to spend any money. After that, I generally, you know, I win the games, and people buy me beers, and I'm doing fine. I don't have to spend any more money. 4 quarters is enough. So I've got 4 quarters in my pocket right now.
Right. I'm pretty sure that the way this is coming down is by people ignoring the system. Yes, Magic.
Well, I've been learning a lot since I moved to this tiny little town. And there are people out here with not enough. A lot of people out here. And I'm starting to learn a lot about all the different resources and things to come in. And where I've turned mostly is food. That's where people come and turn up into my house and need a sandwich. And so already, I, th- I think we're developing an advantage in this place already because in this area, we've only got a few people who have a car. And so the person with the car, we go and we pick up the food and we bring it back. And then we've got all this food and then we pass it all out. And then what we're talking about doing is extending things. And there are people here who are physically and mentally disabled. And it's like everybody here is single and we live in our own little apartments and stuff like that. But I've mentioned to Doc that every one of these places has a beautiful little place with the ground already worked up, where we could put little gardens. And there are so many people here just looking for something to do who really need to get outside,
And it's really
things like
healthy to
that.
get into the soil.
Yeah, and so right out there, the soil is worked up, and there's beautiful grass growing on it.
And
What
grass is
if, what if,
well, the lawn is useless. Put it that way.
right, that's what I'm saying. Um, what if we put a little corner right out their front porch, because we're all old too, and we ask people, what's your favorite thing to grow? And we grow that. And it makes them happy to go out and play around with it. And if they need help with it, they've got a next door neighbor who can come and help out and keep the plant going, and stuff like that. And then from there, you start talking to people.
Mm.
And we're already starting to talk to people because of the food that we pick up and pass out. And we get together and make big batches of stuff because they give us crazy things. We have no choice in what they give us. So we make big batches of things and carry it out to the picnic table out in the middle and go, hey, anybody hungry? And stuff like that. That's what it's like around here. And I think that's a great start.
It is, and I wish that more people did it. Unfortunately, there's a lot of municipalities that will fine you if you turn your lawn into a garden. They want you to have a nice manicured lawn that you spray with toxic chemicals.
Well, I'm glad for the people that can afford to live in those places. I can't. But I live in a place where I can damn sure put in a little garden. I can put one out front and I can put one out back.
I think it's part of the rural urban divide that they try and tell us we have, and that urban folks have to deal with things like homeowners associations and other control freaks that just don't have any weight in rural America, because people go, y'all don't own my property, so I ain't gonna do that.
Yeah. Well, pretty much where I'm at and where I go every day is if my neighbor's hungry, there's something wrong with me.
Well, I think that if this is a good place for the concept of human scale to get introduced, because human scale relies on each of us being one human at any given time. And I know that I am one human.
Right.
If you subdivide me and take off an arm, I'm still a human, but I'm a human without an arm.
Right.
If you subdivide me and take out my heart or my brain or something like that, I'm no longer a functional human. So anything that's below human scale on a human aspect isn't human. Now, Congress and the courts decided that corporations are people, but we're humans. We're not people. And humans also is a loaded term. So I want to even find something different from that. But if you run around calling yourself a Homo sapien, people think you're part of the LGBTQ or STUEW. And I'm not going down that road.
Okay, I'm a little confused at what that has to do with my neighbor being hungry.
No, you're doing it right in feeding your neighbor. And the scale of working as one human, by what I did in the game of existence, I got up to 34 people. So if your network that you're feeding of people in your little community is 34 or less, you're working on human scale.
Okay, I'm a girl, the math thing and all
Right.
that. I just do what I can.
Yeah.
I'm not very concerned about the numbers. What I'm concerned about is the energy I generate.
And each person that you touch by feeding them adds to your collective energy field.
Right.
And so, without knowing the math, just by feeding more people, you'll grow and feed more people. When Jim brings along Carol, who really didn't want to come but saw Jim was actually getting fed and Carol was hungry.
Yeah.
But if this group that you're dealing with remains small, you're under the radar screen and nobody's going to even notice what you're doing until you grow large.
Yeah.
If you promote it and go outside, some authority figure will come in and tell you can't do it,
So,
but you don't
so
need to.
yeah. So, how about if there's all these, we get 10 people watching, and we talk about how we're building and growing a little community that's growing more autonomous all the time, right? And then that person goes, that didn't look so hard. You just got to make a couple of phone calls and talk to a couple people, right? So I wonder what would happen if I did that in my neighborhood. And it's just like feeding one person, right?
Right. And some people like to be feeders and can do that and organize it.
Mm-hmm.
Other people might like drawing. So if they spend
Yes.
time outside drawing and a couple kids come around and they teach them to draw,
Yes.
that's doing the same thing on human scale in a different human network.
Yes.
But on the human scale that the system operates on, 34 or even 55 people in a group isn't even noticed yet because they've got AARP and every damn old person has to be a member of it. And they offer huge monetary consideration like cheap insurance and
Yeah, well, I'm not going to do that when I get old.
Of
I'm
course
not going
you're
to do
not.
it. I'm
Of
not.
course
I'm
you're
not a
not.
member of
No,
AARP.
no, we're not old enough.
Well, the idea is that those sort of groups are insidious in pushing the system, and anybody who does want to play in one of those groups isn't welcome in this corner.
Well, and the other thing that occurs to me, and often occurs to me when I get in conversations like this, is that what you're what you're also dealing with here, which is, you know, it's the beautiful side of humanity that still remains in this depraved culture where people
Yeah.
are actually communicating with one another and they're teaching one another and they're feeding one another. They're not walking around, staring at a cell phone.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody and their dog is staring at their cell phone. I see people
Yeah.
on a date. There's this couple on a date.
Yeah.
They're at a pub sitting at an outside table, and they're both on their phone. They're not even
Yeah.
talking to each other,
Yeah.
and that's common. It's
Yeah.
and it's insane.
And
Well,
there's a sub.
it's
Go ahead.
taken away human connection.
Yeah, well, that's why I refuse to own a cell phone. I don't have.
On the other hand, sir,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to speak to either of you.
Oh, I'm on my laptop.
Me too. But what I'm saying is, we have all these things going on, and if you checked me out, I'm a certified hermit. I don't, I'm guilty. And my laptop works just as well as that phone everybody carries around. I don't like my phone, so I leave it in here.
Yeah. Well, I even have a phone number. I mean, I use Google Voice, and I know that if they want to track me, they can. But the phone is connected to my laptop.
Yeah.
The thing is, when I take a walk, though,
Hi, Nakama.
when I leave the house, I'm completely analog.
Teo, hi.
Yeah, I think that human scale involves each human being a group of one. And when you've got the group of one down, you advance to the next Fibonacci number, which is a group of one. That second group of one is maybe it's 34 because I can handle 34 people at a time. maybe it's 500 something, because I can see where I'm scaling up. At this point, my large group was 233, and I'm headed for the next number, which is 233 plus 144, or 377. But everybody starts at one and goes from one to one, back to one. And if they grow to a group of two, there's three choices. They can remain a group of two and have a good conversation. They can expand to a group of three, like we are at the moment, or they can go back to their groups of one. But every time you go to a group of one, the next group you go to is a group of one. And to get out of one is like being a water molecule and trying to get out of the ocean. It happens, but think of how many water molecules are in the ocean compared to how many evaporate to just get out of the ocean. And then where does that go? Well, most of the time it goes up into a cloud, falls as rain, runs back into a river, and goes back into the ocean. But every so often, a water molecule gets to be part of a human being. And what are human beings but big sacks of water? And so it gets to the point where you have it together enough that you can expand and hold groups of 3 or 5 or 8, and that's still all on a single human being scale. But at the other end of one is the scale of all human beings, and right now they've got us roped into a system that ain't going to work never and has no way out of it unless you go back and start at one. But one 0 point, which is each of us, is a function of scale, and what scale you're working on is entirely up to you. But it's real important to get hold of your group of one, and also what scale you want for your other group of one, so that you have one covered. Because if you get up to 21, 34, 55, you got to be comfortable with people in your group to cover your one when you can't pay attention to it. Because if you got to be the one to cover you as a one, you're not going to be able to deal with a larger group. So this is all part of my group theory, but it's all based on chemistry, and I'm trying to scale it up to human scale, and I'm not sure that it's scalable. But Fibonacci does it.
People are the problem. I mean, very simply put, people are the problem.
And big groups of people are big problems. You have something to say, Magic, or are you just cleaning your screen?
No, I have Three Dog Night playing in my head.
Which song?
One is the loneliest number.
Oh, great song. I think my favorite song is "Circle for a Landing." It's my favorite Three Dog Night song.
I like "Never Been to Spain."
Yeah.
It talks about Oklahoma.
Three Dog Night was never the highest group on my list.
No.
But it was always welcome when it came into the stream.
Yeah.
And after spending a couple of years in the 1970s as a DJ and really getting to know the flow of the music of that era, sometime in the late 80s, I lost track of music entirely. And now here in the 2020s, when I go to listen to music, it's got to be from the era that I know, or something that somebody's turned me on to that I like Coldplay. I would have never found Coldplay if somebody hadn't turned me on to The Scientist. But once I listened to that song, it made sense. Now, I've got a bone to pick with YouTube, because on a normal show, we would then put on the song we're talking about.
Yeah.
But because of the idiocy of how the social media works, mine's is not near as insane as YouTube. And if we try to promote a song here, we get a copyright strike and have to deal with being banned from being able to have a live stream.
Yeah, that's why I
So
like
I
Substack.
agree with
I
you
like
about
being able
Coldplay.
to put any link I
Coldplay's
want on
great.
Substack. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Bruva.
No, I mean, we're all able to speak up, and I apologize if I talked over you. I
It's
really
okay.
dislike it when people talk over anybody, and so my apologies. I don't know who got started first.
Me either.
I was just agreeing with Lenny about Coldplay. That's another group that it's not one of the early groups like Cream and
Right.
and Lennon and all those groups that we grew up with that were so incredible. But I love Coldplay. Coldplay's
Yeah.
a really I love Sting.
Yeah.
Sting is one of those amazing artists that I don't think he even started producing music until the 80s.
he
Well, then
was
there
with the police,
with the Police, yeah,
Yeah.
and that
and
was
the
in the 70s.
police, yeah, the
Yeah,
police did Zenyatta Matata or whatever it's called, Hakuna
yeah,
Matata. I don't know what the name of the album was, but it was a really good album.
yeah.
And I listen to the police quite a bit, but
Hmm.
they're not one of the groups I go to now. I find that I go to Moody Blues, or earlier today I played White Room.
Yeah, White Room, great tune. Moody Blues,
There,
I love the Moody Blues. I
yeah,
used to listen
there's
to CCR all the time, and I hardly ever listen to them anymore. I was just thinking the other day, there's so many groups, even like Fleetwood Mac. Fleetwood Mac is
Daryl, hi.
epic,
we
you know.
got we got a lot of Fleetwood Mac here nonstop when Christy McVie died
Yeah,
about a month ago,
I didn't even
and
see it fast.
yeah, before that, I was heavily into them. When they overloaded me on all the pop Fleetwood Mac that I really don't have ears for,
Right.
I'll go back and play Bob Walsh, Sentimental Woman, which is actually a Fleetwood Mac song.
Yeah,
Bob Walsh played with Fleetwood Mac and got unceremoniously dumped when they picked up uh, Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks.
yeah.
But Stevie Nicks is just one of those quintessential singers
Hmm.
who has done so much over so long. And it's like Ann Wilson of Heart. Anytime I see Stevie doing something with somebody, I just have to watch it. And you know the song with Tom Petty, Stop Dragging My Heart Around?
I was just thinking about that very duo that the two of them
Yeah, she
did
does
together.
that song with Billy Joel,
Oh,
and
okay.
it's awesome.
All that. Don't shoot the piano player.
I thought
Well,
that was Elton.
I like older Fleetwood Mac more than more recent Fleetwood Mac. I mean, you know, it just uh, Future
Well,
Game. Future
it
Game. That's one of my very favorite albums of all time. I love that album.
I wasn't in the Fleetwood Mac then.
Well,
I think that,
that was 1970. I mean,
yeah. Yeah, I was 1970. I was Steppenwolf. Uh, I even had Blood Rock.
nothing
Had
wrong with Wolf.
yeah, DOA by
Born to
Blood
be
Rock,
Wild.
and Iron Butterfly, Inagata Davida.
Oh
Uh,
yeah,
Acid Rock is what they called it.
that was the first album I ever bought. Inagata Davida.
Was it cool? I
First
had
album I
live. Yeah,
ever bought.
I
yeah.
was into the Beatles,
It's
but I
great.
was into the Beatles and nobody else.
Yeah.
And
My
so,
very first album was Magical Mystery Tour, actually.
Oh, that was a great album.
Yeah.
How can you not?
nowadays, oh, go ahead, Bruce.
I said, how can you not like the Beatles?
I know,
I
right?
have friends that don't like the Beatles. I guess because they listened to them so much back in the day that they don't really care for them now.
Well, what they say is that they were there for mind control, and maybe they were good, but maybe they were, but the tunes were good.
Oh, they came out with so many great albums. So
These were great.
And
I
they
mean,
were prolific. They came
Soul,
out
Love
with albums.
Soul, and then Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club
Yeah,
Band.
yeah,
What an amazing album that is.
yeah.
Well, watch, they are bringing out new Beatle music. And part of it is for an anthology with things that they found that they could clean up with the modern uh, games that you can play on computer being so much more.
Hmm.
But my suspicion is that they're going to flood our old music with AI generated sound alikes, and they're going to send us different messages than the music philosophy of the 60s and 70s actually brought us. And so when we start hearing that they suddenly found this new track and they're putting it out for the first time, and it sounds exactly like John Lennon singing some song you've never heard, that's because the AI can do that now. And they can put together the Beatles without the Beatles even being bought in participants.
That
But you got,
the the real reason why AI can't smoke pot.
right.
That's his big problem. If AI could smoke pot, if we could get Congress to smoke pot, we'd be a lot better off.
Well, I'm
Give us some
ready to
really good
dump
herb
the
and give
whole
them some
Congress.
mushrooms.
No, but by working on human scale and not hitting the radar screen, but staying at the low end of whatever they roll out so you're still included in the system, but not giving it any more attention than the minimum of what it needs, we'll be able to build small groups of people all over the place that are self sufficient within their group. And when things actually collapse, we'll have enough people who know what's going on to just bring up the system we've been building. But if we roll it out, they'll just go thump and crash on it. And we're not going to get change by working within the system, but we're going to get Wile E. Coyote world if we don't.
Wild coyote.
Yeah, here I'm gonna put on a quick Wile E. Coyote short video, and
Cool.
I mean short when I say short video. It almost didn't run. Let me run it again.
Well, oh, there we go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it took too much time for them to actually get on it. But this is the classic Wile E. Coyote, and we are all Wile E. Coyote in this world.
Mhm.
And so, no matter what you do, that's the outcome if you get onto that scale. Sometimes in the old cartoons, they used to drop a safe on people. Monty Python squashed people with the big foot, but it's a game of whack a mole, and we're the moles
Yeah, we
because
sure
it's
are.
one big club, like George Carlin said, and we're not part of it.
Yeah.
So if we're not part of their club, why should we even bother to pay any more than the rudimentary attention that tells them that we're good little people at the bottom of the system and we've got no personal power because we're not letting them have any of our personal power.
The internet is so key, and they control the internet, of course. I mean, we
Right.
if they take the internet down, we're not going to be able to communicate anymore.
For about a month, and then we'll have something better than the internet. But as long as the internet's here, we might as well use it.
Might as well. Why? What do you think will arise? When you say that something better than the internet, I mean, besides personal communication, of course, that is the best.
If
Yeah.
if I were to roll it out and discuss it here, the algorithm would pick up on what we say and it would not be any longer possible.
Oh,
So I don't, just in saying it will make the algorithm insane. And I'd be sure to be shadow banned if I wasn't already shadow banned.
yeah.
But you see, I am shadow banned, and the people who know that I'm here, like Upcycle Club, will find me when I'm
Cycle
here.
Club.
And people who tap in and find us will get the idea that we, as a network of people, are each competent on the scale of one individual human and work on a scale of, well, we get to choose the scale we work on, and we don't necessarily have to always work on the same scale. But if we're working on an individual human scale, 21 people is about the biggest size of a group you want to deal with. Anything more than 21 people, and it's a real heart attack. And even then, 13 is better than 21,
Yeah.
but we're in a growth thing. And the growth includes every number larger than the Fibonacci number until you reach the next Fibonacci number, which then has a -1 inclusivity. So if you reach 20 going up, you're not at 21 yet. But once you've gotten to 21, if you drop back to 20, you're still at 21.
Hmm.
And so that ±1 is great because at human scale, one of each of us, ±1 leads us to numbers between 0 and 2. So in a group of 2, that still allows you to be your whole number 1. Whereas in a group of 3, we have to be careful of not talking over each other or give a signal when we have something to say. And it's a bit more complicated than a group of 2, but it's entirely doable. If we were to go up to a group of 5 by adding 2 more people, the complications that would come about would be things that we're not seeing here with 3 people. We might get into a 3-on-2 argument or a 4-on-1. Go ahead, Bruce.
Well, I just wanted to make a comment that there are a lot of people, too many people, who, even in a group of 2, will talk over you constantly. And you can, with some people, you can barely get a word in edgewise. And they just yak and yak and yak and yak. And
That's why we like hermits as a group of 1. A hermit will always find their group of 1 when somebody's yakking at them.
yeah, I just stopped communicating with people like that. I don't want anything to do with them.
I thought that's because I was an asshole.
I think that if you don't have a hold of your group of 1 single human individual, you are in a problem situation and need to get alone somewhere. And that virtually not alone is for people who already have their hermit controlled as a group of 1 and can go back to that 0 point of being themselves in a group of higher scale that is not based at 1. But you got to build up to that. And I don't think anybody's going to catch me in the game of existence on the scale of building to 377 if they're starting at 1 right now, because it's taken me 22 years to get that far. But the goal of the game is to get the whole world population in the game. And that will happen because Fibonacci goes up that high. And it's actually not that far. It's like if you're playing a video game that has 36 screen boards and you get to the 36th screen board and win the game. That's as far as the whole population of Earth is concerned. But now we're finding out that there's populations of humans in other places other than here on Earth. And, that's something that they have denied for so long that part of being not insane in a normal world is you can't believe in aliens. Or if you believe in them, you have to accept their version of alien, which is something funny like the Men in Black. The Men in
Right.
Black was a documentary. Go ahead, Magic.
I have a picture of aliens with Santa Claus in Florida. I made it on Night Cafe. It looks just like Doc.
Well, I am Santa Claus of Delray Beach, and I'm incognito, but when I go to Publix, I can be found to give a ho 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 to a little kid in a cart. And some of the older folks my age sort of recognize and play along. And I had one good 5 to 10 minute discussion with a guy on a bicycle, totally in the Santa Claus character, explaining how it would be insane to stay at the North Pole in the middle of summer when you could be catching a tan in Delray Beach. But he couldn't
Makes
talk
perfect
to the
sense
people
to me.
about it. They won't buy it.
That's funny. I
Yeah.
love that stuff.
You kind of have to believe in Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and the Good Fairy and that sort of stuff.
Me,
Because if you don't believe in magic, you don't get magic.
I believe in magic.
I believe in magic too.
Thank you.
I'll go on with that.
Thank you. Thank
But
you.
do we believe in Olivia Newton-John?
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I don't know who she really is.
She sung a song in the 1970s called
Yes, she
Magic.
did. Yes, she did.
And she acted with John Travolta
In Greece.
in Greece, which I don't know. I was never much a fan of Greece,
Me either.
but I love it on stage.
I didn't see it on stage.
Yeah, I grew up in a family of people who participated on stage.
Yeah.
And so part of my thing from being 7 till I was 13 or 14 was being a stage hand and a bit character. And so I got to play, I think my best role was a guy named Jones in Little Abner. And I was married to Available Jones, who was the most gorgeous girl in the whole world, the one that stupefied Little Abner to steal her from Daisy May.
Mm-hmm.
But that was
Yeah.
my casting. But as a college professor, when I was teaching at a community college, all that stage play came right back. And every time I gave a lecture, it was a big stage play.
Yeah.
You have fun and you talk out to the audience and you make sure they get concept A before you go on to concept B, because concept G matters to both A, B, C, and D. And if they didn't get one of them, they can't put it together. But chemistry is taught in 11th grade in a totally confusing way, because everybody gets their first dose of chemistry in like 8th or 9th grade when their hormones start changing. And if you don't know what's happening because you don't know any chemistry, think of 8-year-olds and how the world would be different if an 8-year-old knew chemistry and knew enough biology to know that all those crazy hormones that are coming into their body are part of growth and nothing to be worried about, instead of being allowed to associate with other teenagers undergoing the same thing, all in the absence of having any clue of chemistry or biology.
Mayhem. Pure mayhem.
Dad was a doctor, so I had the lowdown. I had the lowdown from an early age. This is what's going on.
Well, I'm looking at the clock and it says we've been going for an hour.
Yeah.
And even though this has been a fantastic discussion, I want to keep them to an hour because that's still 5 or 6 times more than most people's attention span. But let me thank you both again, and we'll
Thank
pick up
you.
on a similar conversation, maybe later in the weekend
Okay.
or early next week. I'm not sure. We'll invite some other persons in to contribute. A group of 3 and a group of 4 have the same functional mathematics in Fibonacci because there is no 4 in Fibonacci. So 4 is an expansion of 3 till you get to 5, and then 4 becomes part of 5 because of that -1 that you're allowed, because that's the minimum realm of error. And with that, let's all say goodbye to the folks who are watching, and we thank them for their
Thank you, everyone.
participation.
Nice,
Nice
And
to
nice
see you
chatting with
again
you
over
guys. Magic and Lenny.
uh,
Love you guys.
love
Uh,
you.
look forward to our next conversation.
okay, hang out and we'll kill the broadcast.
Okay.